Hi, my name is David Clanton. I'm the pastor at First Christian Church of Moncks Corner, and this is the staff orientation video for Camp Edisto. And if you're watching this video, I want to first of all say thank you for volunteering to serve with us at Camp Edisto and to make our camp program the best it can be. We're very dependent upon our volunteers to serve throughout the different weeks of camp we offer each summer. And this video is an attempt to make sure that we, first of all, thank you and express our gratitude for using your time and your gifts. But also to make sure that as a staff we are all on the same page, working towards the same goals, and to make sure that you know the expectations and guidelines so that you can set a good example for the campers and also help them to make good choices while they're here. So several things we want to go over, and we'll try to keep this as brief as we can. First of all, I want to talk about some staff guidelines. First and foremost, when you're here serving with us at camp, your number one priority is, of course, the campers. We want to encourage you to be with them, not only during the scheduled times, such as chapel or classes, but also the free time and the meals as well. I would discourage you from trying to make connections with every single camper. I don't think that's very practical. But if you could try to make a concerted effort to invest in between 4 and 6 campers during the week, try to touch base with them a few times throughout each day, make sure they're engaged in the camp program, I think that's where you're really going to see the benefit from those relationships. Try to get to know them, make sure that they're involved in what's going on. The last thing we'd want to happen is for a camper to go home and to feel like no one really made an effort to get to know them and to invest in a relationship with them. Your dean may be dividing the campers up into teams or families, and so perhaps you could get together with your fellow team leaders and subdivide your team into smaller groups that you'll personally spend time investing in. To our teen staff, we have many teenagers who come and work at some of the weeks of camp for our younger campers. I want to remind you that as you come to serve here, that you are here to serve and not to be served. This is not your week of camp. We need you to be examples of maturity and responsibility for the campers that you'll be working with. Any extra privileges that you might get as a part of being a part of the staff, such as maybe being able to stay out a little bit later at night once the campers have been put down for the evening. All those privileges are at the complete discretion of the dean, but whatever he or she says is what goes. Please do not abuse your authority or you will be sent home. Remember that your number one priority, being a staff person in a week of camp, is to be a responsible volunteer and to make sure that you are there to serve the campers. When it comes to the use of cell phones, computers, other electronic devices, we would ask that each of you would limit your use of those things to times and to places when campers are not present or around, meaning in the morning before they wake up or in the evenings after they have been after they've gone to bed. Church camp is a place where we try to break free from the ordinary pace of life and many of the distractions that we have back home. So we as a staff want to set a good example of that for our campers. If you must use your phone during the day, please let it be only for urgent matters, and please be very discreet about it. The camp does have a landline that campers and staff can use if and when necessary. Campers are not allowed to have or use cell phones while on campus. We have had numerous occasions in the last few years when campers have been texting or calling either one another or people who were not on or who were outside of the camp, and it's become a major disruption to our camp program. So if a camper needs to call home for any reason, they need to notify the dean, and he or she will determine if it's necessary and how and when it will be done. After you've arrived at camp, we would request that after you've dropped off your stuff, your luggage at your cabin, that you would park your vehicle in one of the 2 designated areas on the camp property. One is directly in front of the chapel. The other is right outside of the girls' cabin areas. We ask this for a couple of different reasons. One, we want to make sure that your car remains safe and that campers aren't walking to inspect your car for any reason or wanting to hide in your car for any reason during some of the activities we go on. And we also want to try to keep the central part of the campus free and clear of vehicles for camper safety. There are a number of activities and events that require a lot of movement around campus. Sometimes even in the evenings, we want to make sure there is few obstacles as possible there. So if you could please abide by this, it would be greatly appreciated. When it comes to visitors at camp, we generally try to discourage visitors simply because it can also serve as a disruption to the program itself. Sometimes parents will show up, and for some of the younger kids, if they see somebody else's mom or dad show up, then they want to talk to their mom or dad to see theirs, and it can sometimes create some of the homesick issues that we can experience with the younger campers. So we generally try to discourage visitors. However, if somebody does come to the camp, first and foremost, they must notify the dean of their presence. We encourage parents, if they're going to be picking up their children early or picking up children and bringing them back, that they let the dean know that on Sunday when they drop their child off. All visitors must check in with the dean upon arrival. If you see someone that you do not recognize on the campus, go to them immediately and politely ask them to, first of all, to identify themselves, and then take them to the dean so that they can follow up with him or her. There are certain areas on the campus where we'd like to make sure that campers do not go. Certainly they don't need to be in the kitchen for any reason, or in the kitchen staff cabin area. Boys obviously do not need to be in the girls' cabin area or anywhere in that vicinity, nor do girls need to be in the boys' cabin area or anywhere in that vicinity. When it comes to the use of the swimming pool, the lifeguard is the authority at the camp. All staff and campers must abide by the rules and guidelines that are laid down by the lifeguard. There are some rules that are posted at and around the pool that must be followed at all times. There's to be no running on the pool deck, as it can get very slippery, and that provides a safety issue. There's to be no horseplay in the pool, no pushing, shoving, chicken fighting, rocking the pool. Staff needs to help make sure that the campers are rinsing off before they get in the pool, making sure that all dirt, sand, grass, other kind of things that can clog the filters are removed before they enter into the pool. At junior and intermediate weeks of camp, the lifeguard will administer a swim test to all campers on Sunday afternoon, and as a result of their performance in the swim test, they'll receive a wristband that will denote which parts of the pool that they are allowed to be in throughout the remainder of the week. When it comes to swimsuits at the pool, staff can help enforce the camp's guidelines on that. For our young ladies, one pieces are preferred. If they have a two-piece bathing suit, it must be covered up by a t-shirt, and it has to be a darker colored shirt that actually covers the bathing suit when wet. The tankini model of bathing suit is allowed as long as it is modest and covers the appropriate amount of skin. If there is any concern about that, we will let our female staff use their discretion as to whether or not the bathing suit is appropriate. When it comes to our young men, we just need to make sure that we ensure that their bathing suits are tied properly and are not coming loose or hanging low as they enter and exit out of the pool. Most of the discipline problems that we have at camp tend to take place in or around the cabins. And so we encourage our staff to make sure that anytime our campers are around the cabins, that there's also staff present at the cabins. Campers are only to be in the cabins at times specified by the dean in his or her schedule. If campers are at the cabins, we do request that staff also be present. We need to make sure that everyone's personal belongings are respected. Anyone found to have been in someone else's personal belongings may be dismissed from the camp program. We need to make sure that there are no pranks or practical jokes that are pulled on anyone involving messing with anyone else's property. We want to keep the cabins clean. Each day we need to make sure that campers have kept up with their personal areas and that trash has been thrown away. Each dean may have their own personal schedule about how often the cabin areas should be cleaned or swept. And we absolutely want to make sure that when your week and your camp program has been completed, that you have a plan in place for making sure that the cabins and the bathroom areas and dining halls, chapel, everything that's a part of the campus is left clean for the upcoming week. No food or drinks are allowed in the cabins at any times. The campers are specifically told not to bring food or drink to camp, but some will still do so. If it is opened or taken out of their suitcase or luggage, a staff member can take it away and return it to the camper at the end of the week. We want to make sure we diminish this because of obviously the issues of bugs getting into the cabins and making that uncomfortable for everyone. So no food or drink is allowed in the cabins at any time for any reason. We want to try to make sure we keep the noise level down in the evenings in the cabins, particularly after lights have gone out. Keep that to a minimum. Obviously, we want our kids to get some sleep, to get some rest because of the busy camp program, but most importantly, we want to be respectful of the neighbors of the camp, and make sure that we aren't getting too loud in the evenings. Please do everything that you can in and around the cabins to make sure that the campers are taking care of personal hygiene, getting daily showers, brushing teeth, those sorts of things, wearing clean clothes. It would be impossible to completely monitor this, but do all that you can to make sure that the campers are taking care of themselves. Your presence at the cabins will help decrease the amount of inappropriate activities such as horseplay or hazing or certainly fighting that might take place in the cabins. And also, please keep an eye on campers. In the past, we've had some issues with people defacing the camp property by signing bunks or walls in the cabins or in the bathrooms. We want to try to keep an eye on this because we want to make sure that our camp is being protected and that we are caring for it. If you happen to see a young person doing that, the dean should be talking about this on Sunday as a part of camper orientation. But let them know that if they deface the camp property in any way, that they will be held responsible for whatever care is needed in making repairs or repainting any surfaces that have been written on. Remember that the time of night in the cabins can be a very important time for relationship building, so please make sure you're present and available with those kids who may want to have opportunities to talk with you, share with you, get to know you a little bit better, so please take full advantage of that. Let me quickly go over the camper rules and guidelines so that you'll know what they are and you can help enforce those with the campers to make sure they have the best week possible. As I mentioned before, no electronic devices of any kind are allowed to be brought to camp by the campers. That includes radios, TVs, cell phones, any kind of tablets or video game devices of any kind. If you see a camper with one, you are to warn them the first time, and if you see it a second time, then you are to confiscate that item for the remainder of the camp program and return it to them before they go home. The parent letter that is issued to campers at the beginning of the week and the registration letter clearly communicates this, but sometimes that information is not received, so even on Sunday evening in the cabins, you may want to take the opportunity to inform your campers of that rule. There's to be no tobacco, alcohol of any kind, obviously weapons allowed on campus. That includes pocket knives, things like that are brought. Once again, you may want to issue that warning to the campers at the beginning of the week and let them know if they've brought anything like that, then they need to keep it in their suitcase, in their luggage, and not let it be seen by any other campers. If you see any pocket knives of any kind, then once again, you need to confiscate that until the end of the camp program and return it back to the camper before they go home. All clothing is to be modest. We've already talked about the proper wear in and around the pool, but that includes just throughout the day in the program. Oftentimes when kids wake up in the morning, sometimes we'll have some girls who will want to stroll to the dining hall in their pajamas. That is not acceptable and not allowed, so please make sure that all kids are dressed properly at all times as a part of the camp program. Shoes must be worn at all times around the campus. There are places where rocks can be stepped on or roots and things like that. We want to make sure that people are protecting themselves. The only place that shoes can be removed is certainly at the pool and in the showers. At all those times, the campers need to make sure that they are wearing the proper footwear. No camper is allowed to enter or leave the camp without the dean's permission. If there's going to be a parent picking up a child early or picking up a child and then bringing them back at some point during the week, that needs to be communicated to the dean on Sunday at the time of check-in so that the dean can be prepared to receive those parents when they come during the camp program. All emergency phone calls need to be made from the camp, as we've already discussed. If a child feels like there's an emergency or an urgent need to contact a parent, they need to come and talk to the dean, and the dean will determine whether or not that call is necessary to make. Visitors must have the dean's permission to tour the camp. Visitors, as I said, are generally discouraged because often it can disrupt the camp program. The dean reserves the right to dismiss or exclude or restrict anyone who does not abide by the rules or is overly disruptive or disrespectful. Once again, that could be for a variety of different situations, and that would be at the dean's discretion. But we want to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the program for the ones who are making the right decisions and who are there for the right reasons. The campers are expected to stay for the duration of the camp program. If any other arrangements need to be made, once again, that needs to be communicated with the dean from the parents at the time of check-in. Campers need to actively participate in all the events in the daily schedule. That includes chapels, meals, recreation. If a camper is having a difficult time engaging in the program, the staff needs to do all that it can through encouragement and trying to redirect the campers to get involved. They're going to get more out of it the more they put into it. So do all that you can as a staff person to make sure that every child is actively engaging in the program each and every day. All medications need to be turned in to the camp nurse during registration on Sunday afternoon. There is to be no medication kept inside the cabins for any reasons. We want to make sure that the campers themselves don't have access to that, or that other campers are not invading the space of others and taking medication that obviously has not been prescribed for them. At this time, I want to talk about a very difficult and very sensitive but a very important issue that you as a staff person working with young people need to be aware of. Church camp is a wonderful experience. It's a place where young people build and develop a lot of trust amongst their fellow campers, but also with the staff who are working with them. We have a number of young people who are coming from very troubled backgrounds, many of whom may have experienced some form of abuse in their past and in their homes and their families. So you need to be aware that there may come a time at a week of camp where a young person will come to you and need to share something of that nature with you, and you need to be prepared on how to receive that. So I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about that and talk about what your responsibilities are when a young person comes and shares some stories with you or some issues involving physical or sexual abuse. Sexual abuse can be defined as any of the following: fondling, oral, genital, or anal stimulation, nonviolent intercourse, incest, rape, assault, obscene words, peeping in doors or windows, indecent exposure, and or causing or allowing a child to witness adult sexual relations. If a camper shares with you at any time they have experienced any of these things, either while at camp or before they came to camp at home, you have a legal obligation to report this. If a camper comes to you and says that they've been a victim of physical abuse in any way, certainly at camp, but also if they've experienced it at home before they've come to camp, you also have a legal responsibility to report this. And here's your procedure for reporting that abuse. First and foremost, you need to listen to the camper. Please don't panic, don't overreact, don't lead them with questions. Simply let them tell their story. You are to never promise that you won't tell anyone else. If they come to you and say, I have something to tell you, but you have to promise you can't tell anyone, what you promise them is that no matter what, you will always act in their best interest. Number two, remember that it is not your responsibility to determine if the story is true or false. Your responsibility is to listen to the story, to document what you've been told, and to report it to the dean. That is step number three, to take the camper directly to the dean. If the incident has happened at the camp nurse may also need to be consulted on that matter. Number four, affirm the camper by letting them know that they did the right thing by discussing the situation. And let them know that you will do all you can to keep them safe and protected. And the fifth step for you is to file an official report with Child Protective Services. That is the responsibility of the dean and the camp directors. The confidentiality of the camper and the situation needs to be protected, and any sharing of information outside of the appropriate personnel is a legal violation of the camper's rights. So once you have shared the incident and you have documented, writing down what has been shared with you with the camp dean, at that point it is the dean's responsibility along with the camp directors to take it to the proper channels. If abuse happens at camp, if a staff member is suspected of child abuse, the dean must be notified immediately. To the extent possible, the informant of that abuse shall remain confidential. So we do not want you to be in fear of ratting on one of your fellow staff members. We will do all that we can to keep what you've seen and what you've experienced confidential. But at the same time, please don't allow that concern to keep you from sharing about an incident of abuse that you have seen or you've witnessed. The camper will be removed from all contact with a suspected abuser. The dean and or the camp directors will confront the suspected abuser with the concern. If the dean and or the camp directors have reason to believe that any abuse or neglect has occurred, they will report the situation to the proper authorities. The dean and the camp directors will inform the parents of the situation, and any statements that need to be made for public release will be the responsibility of the camp leadership team. Camp Edisto will commit to cooperate with all public agencies in this matter. As a staff person, you need to make sure that you practice appropriate behavior at all times to eliminate any perception of improper physical or sexual abuse. And here's how you can go about doing that. First of all, be smart about how you show affection and attention to the campers. Our campers who are here, as we said before, many of them come from very troubled backgrounds, and they may not receive much attention or affection at home and in their families. So they need both of those things, but you need to learn to make sure you express it in appropriate ways. When campers are giving you hugs, try to make sure you hug side to side as much as possible. You need to be aware of camper crushes that sometimes develop towards staff people. You might need to distance yourself from a camper who may have developed inappropriate feelings for you. And also make sure that you are never alone with a camper of either gender, male or female. If a camper wants to spend some time talking with you, certainly that is an thing that I would encourage. They need something they need to share with you, or just want to take some time to talk. But please make sure you do that in an open space, preferably outside, where you're always visible to the eyes of other people at any time. Please be smart about how you discipline campers. We are not their parents, therefore we do not have the right to impart any physical means of discipline upon these campers. That includes hitting, pushing, spanking. All these things are forbidden. You may take away privileges, or you may give privileges as a part of encouraging good behavior. You may have younger campers sit in a timeout. You are to encourage the campers to learn and to develop good conflict resolution skills when they have disputes with one another and with you. Please do not scream or yell or use derogatory remarks toward any camper. Please avoid extended lectures and speeches. If a camper is continuing to choose to behave inappropriately or disrespectfully, it may result in them being sent home from the camp program. Let's go over a few things about crisis intervention. First of all, when you see or witness any sort of violence, bullying, fighting taking place on the camp property. Camp Edisto has a zero tolerance policy when it comes to threatening or violent behavior. Any violent or threatening behavior will result in immediate dismissal from the camp program for the offending camper. Fighting is not allowed, and it will result in dismissal from the camp program. Any comment by a camper or a staff person alluding to having a weapon on the campgrounds should be reported to the dean or to the camp directors immediately. Comments made by anyone glorifying violent acts such as school shootings, acts of terrorism, etc. Are completely inappropriate. These need to be brought to the attention of the dean as soon as possible and may also result in dismissal from the camp program. If you see or experience any examples of bullying, that also needs to be brought to the attention of the dean immediately, and if this is found to be corroborated, it may also result in the dismissal of that camper or campers from the program as well. When it comes to the exposure of our campers to any potential health risk or issues like that, it's the goal of the camp, obviously, to maintain a safe and risk-free environment for campers and for staff. You need to tell your staff, the deans are responsible for telling their staffs to quickly identify situations at camp that present a risk of exposure to potentially infectious blood or body fluids. Please refer all health situations to your camp nurse or other trained medical personnel so that the exposure is limited. Children and adults with communicable diseases such as chickenpox, pink eye, lice, or ringworm and other such things will not be permitted to participate in the camp program. All campers must have a medical information sheet filled out and on file with the dean to ensure accurate information and to aid in providing care in case of injury or illness. In the case of medical emergencies, all weeks of camp should have a volunteer camp nurse. This individual needs to have some sort of medical training. If the dean is unable to provide that person to serve at the camp, then the camp directors will be responsible for providing someone to serve in that capacity. The camp nurse is responsible for tending to minor first aid issues and to administering medications to the campers. Any medical issue or emergency that is beyond these needs will be referred to our nearest medical facility and providers. The dean will handle the process of notifying those facilities and or the parents as well. Other unlikely but possible crisis events such as fire, tornado, lost camper, bad thunderstorms should be handled according to the instructions in the policy and procedures manual that the dean should be familiar with. When an emergency has taken place, or you have intervened in a fight, or you've been the recipient of information concerning abuse, please take time to document the steps that you took in responding to the situation, sign and date that information, and please give it to the dean. I know this has been a lot of information to absorb, and if there's anything that you are not clear on or that you didn't fully understand, please notify me at any time, and we'll make sure that we clear those issues up for you. Once again, I want to thank you for serving at Camp Edisto. We'll be praying for you and praying for the campers as well, and that most importantly, Jesus Christ is glorified through all that we do, and that we do all we can to help these young people who come to camp come to know Him in a real and life-changing way, and grow in Him through their experiences in this most important ministry. Thank you.